Here, let
I
me,
am so,
sorry.
geez, Louise. I am so grateful for the generosity, abundance, and attentiveness of the universe to my needs. I am provided for with such grace and love. All resources for my life purpose to be successfully and joyfully expressed are freely given to me. May all beings consciously know the loving embrace of the universe and fulfill their sacred purpose. So be it.
Love that.
Yeah, these cards are so amazing. Would highly recommend. But that feels perfect for our full moon chat about service in this way and being provided for. So much to tie into the postpartum time, resources and support, and yeah, all of it. All will be
Yeah,
given.
excellent. So in case people didn't know, that is the topic today. Real and raw postpartum life unfiltered. So where shall we begin with our unfiltration?
Unfiltered. Well, I think we're generally unfiltered, so that kind of was redundant.
Well, just in case people
uh,
didn't know.
huh?
Just in case people didn't know, we put it in there, you know?
Sure, sure. Yeah, we are often unfiltered. But I suppose that vein of this topic is where we're focusing today. And that being that the time after birth is beautiful, it's sacred, it is also an initiation. We really die in birth, metaphorically, we really are reborn with the baby. So there are so many like beautiful um, like expansive ways to describe the postpartum. And I think the unfiltered version kind of weaves in and out of that. It's expansive and beautiful. And then there is the realness for many of us and in the women we serve that our culture really isn't set up for holding the space that is needed for this regeneration that the woman in particular goes through. So even if it was, maybe it's just in our code, our genetic code somehow to have struggles, right? We have a new baby, we have a new life we're integrating outside of our own body after 9 months of being connected. So there's a lot of grief, perhaps, that's one of the feelings. There are a lot of feelings that come up. And again, even for women that have had really beautiful, blissful births, that might be surprising, especially if you're supporting women. You might not quite understand if that hadn't been your experience, or maybe you've never had a baby, but it is a complex time. So I think that's what the unfiltered means to me at the moment, just that it's a complex time. And it's really like everything, that pregnancy held, all the expectations that pregnancy and birth held kind of are left in this postpartum time, right? Like, were they realized? Did we have the birth we wanted? Who is this baby? Is this baby who we thought they were? We have a million ways of just kind of having to sit with the last 9 or 10 months, which is huge.
And often it really truly is literally sitting with as well when you're sitting with a baby and, you're removed from the world in a way that is sort of unusual, although perhaps it shouldn't be. It's kind of like a sabbatical kind of time too, where there's just more space, I feel like, for things to come to the surface. I had sort of a crazy idea.
Yeah. Somebody is not muted, and I don't have any control over this
I did
panel.
it. I
Okay.
fixed it. It would require people to participate in the chat, which, if people want to turn their videos on, we love seeing your faces. You totally don't have to, but we totally get it if you're like cooking dinner or something, and or there's kids running around in the background. Just putting that out there, that we love seeing your faces. But I was sort of envisioning this call earlier and was thinking it'd be interesting to ask people to in the chat just put like a personal this is if you've had a baby, of course, like a highlight from their postpartum time, maybe in like a sentence or less, and like a really one of the challenging memories from a postpartum time, just to like highlight how wide and varied the experience can be, not to like polarize it even more so, but I don't know, people would have to be willing to pop that in the chat. Should we try it?
Sure.
Okay, so over in the chat, would love to hear from you if you've been through the postpartum. A high and a low, I guess, in a sentence or less, just so we can kind of speak that into the, or type that into the space and hold space for each other in our experiences. And the idea for this, as if you're typing, you can listen while you type if you want, came from, you know, me racking my brain over the last week or two as we've been really focused on this topic and trying to think like, what are some of the stories I would want to share, you know, here in the indie birth community, and what are some that I want to share like with my own kids as they get older about like that time period with them. And I of course have really beautiful memories and experiences, and then I also have, it feels like, a heap of really challenging ones as well. I think I see people typing. Lynn said, my high was being ecstatic at having a healthy, beautiful baby. My low was not understanding the weirdness I was going through, which was depression, nutrition, and lack of sleep. Doula Tiara said, I've not had my own child yet, but as a doula, one beautiful memory I have of my clients' postpartum experience is when they get that first latch and are resting and settled in with the baby. Yes. Susie said, currently 3 months postpartum with my third child, 24 hours of active labor, where my midwife had to manually break my water to deliver, and our sweet angel was born within 60 seconds after that. So powerful and exhausting. The high for Eliza, being really present with myself and my baby, tuning into my body and intuition. Low, feeling overwhelmed with all the change and having to do so much without enough support. Thanks for sharing all of that, everybody. Stories really are like so powerful, and you know, the word postpartum in our culture has become synonymous with postpartum depression. Like they're used interchangeably in these really silly ways. So much of our culture is focused on, you know, it feels like culturally, either you bounce back and you're doing great, or you have postpartum depression, and those are kind of your two options. And I think, like Maryn said, the time is way more complex than that, and we've oversimplified it in so many ways. And probably partly because women are taking care of a new baby, right? There's not a lot of extra time during that window. There's not a lot of like written accounts of of the postpartum that women have shared with each other. And so it just sort of feels like a vacuum in some ways of stories and experience and sharing. And also, you know, when we're not taking care of each other necessarily like we perhaps did in other time periods, you know, there's just not a lot of witnessing happening in real time either. So I think it's really important that we share our stories, the good, the bad, and also maybe even more importantly, the complex, like the not black and white, not polarized or like over simplified. Where shall we take it from here, Maryn?
Yeah, it's making me think of the birth story and how we integrate that even through the postpartum. I think there's something really raw about that experience. Again, whether you've had the birth of your dreams, that's probably a little simpler in this example. But more if things were whatever, put whatever into the box, like long, complicated, unexpected, more painful than you thought. Like it doesn't have to mean, you went to the hospital. Sometimes births are just not what we expect. And I know I've sat in that space in some of my postpartums. And I think that's just like such a fascinating thing, how the story in our mind kind of like shifts and ebbs and flows, which is why when I'm working with people, I do encourage them to get the birth story out, even if it's an audio file they make on their phone, right? I mean, we all know typing or writing isn't that easy when you're nursing all day, but just because that first version of your birth story, that second version, or that third, or, later on, it's really amazing how that shifts. And I think that's part of our healing process, actually, as Margo said, in this context of sharing stories here today, sharing our birth story, even if no one else ever read it, is very therapeutic. And I think allows us to see what happened and our own levels of healing and how we participated in it. So that's something that I find just like fascinating as you're going through this time reliving the birth. And I can see in the comments too, right, that many of the highlights and lowlights were actually, they're actually more about the birth in a way. So it's like the postpartum is the aftermath of the actual birth, which sounds obvious, but I don't feel like we talk about it a lot in that way. Like, okay, this big thing happened. Yes, you had a baby, but like, how did it happen? Where did it happen? How did it feel? What did that do to you? And how is that going to shift you over time? And I think that's one of the most important ways that we can show up for each other. So sometimes it's as a midwife, I don't always have the time, in a sense. You don't have the time to necessarily like do that with every woman at every point in her postpartum, but I think it is an important role to possibly be filled, hence the postpartum doula, or whatever you want to call yourself, that you're kind of holding space for this shifting story, because I think that's the realness of it. When women tell their birth stories years later, they're usually simplified, right? And sometimes they're highly negative, and sometimes they just get simplified over time because we forget how it felt. But in that postpartum time, our cells are like reorganizing based on that experience, and I just find that to be a really fun thing to talk about.
I was just reading some more of the comments over here. It is a really fun thing to talk about. And, part of why we've been talking about it, I don't know if we necessarily want to get into it right now, but part of why we've been talking about it more is because we created an offering for people who want to learn about the postpartum time and be able to give really good care to women in their communities during that time, whether that's in the postpartum doula role or whatever you want to call it. Could be anything, any old name. And so a card I had pulled for myself earlier today was the Page of Wands. So I don't have to get into the whole thing, but basically, it's feeling really inspiring, and like there's some new energy and new creativity around this particular place of service and support for women. I know you've been feeling that, Maryn, and I'm sort of tagging along in that. And just this is a really amazing entry point also for people who want to get into the work of birth, babies, the birthing year, in this really beautiful way, and also not have to deal with the being on call piece. It's kind of a gentle entry point, I think, for people who want to be working with women. So just wanted to put that out there too, that's why one of the reasons why we've been talking so much about this lately. It's been on our minds as we built out this new training program.
A link would be great, Margo, if
Oh yeah,
you
that's right.
can post that. We call it Mothering the Mother. I'm sure you've seen some posts or emails, but that is our all-inclusive postpartum support course. And that is open right now until October 1st. So if you want to get in on this round of it, you can check that out. If not, I'm sure it'll circle back around at some point, but that's where our focus is right now. And we never kind of know where it will go after, but it's still a super important offering for you, I think. And then should you decide to take that to your community or your family or your friends, either way, I think it's such a beautiful gift to have the skills to support a family during that time. And there's more to it than you would think, as we're talking about. It's helpful to be someone that's aware, just even on a basic level, with what a family needs, right? So if you have a best friend that has a baby, you'll know, just going to go over and get out their vacuum and clean up their kitchen, right? That stuff's super important. And I think for most of us, it's pretty intuitive to be of service in that way. But we go into a lot more depth, obviously, into things like holding space for the birth story. I was kind of blabbing about that. And, cooking very specific meals and preparing the family. So if we're not preparing people, that is going to make this all around a lot more difficult. And it's already real and raw, as we're describing. So imagine how much harder it is. And I know many of you have experienced that. I certainly have. How much harder it is when you are not prepared. It is a billion times harder when your family is unprepared as well. And I've seen it, we've all seen it. Well, maybe not all of us, but Margo and I have seen it many times, even when we have done our best to prepare people. There's a lot that goes into getting ready for this time that I don't think people think about. Even with, home birth midwifery care, it's not something a lot of midwives spend a lot of time on because there's other things. And I get that, they're really focused on the birth, for example. That seems to be the main focus. Or maybe something comes up in someone's pregnancy. So truly postpartum education for even a home birthing family is usually pretty nil. And, those families, even when they have great births, have the same challenges. It's not really that different.
Yeah, I think that the preparation piece is so huge, and the expectations and just framing the whole time and the needs of the time, both for the mom and for her family. Just with all of this going on and having just created this course, I've been talking about this with friends too. I was at a potluck last Friday, so a week ago, and I think that was right around the time we launched the course. And I met some new people, two new women, and I was there with one of my best friends who is my next door neighbor now. And we were talking about the postpartum. And of course, when I tell people I'm a midwife, people want to share their birth story at a potluck, of course. So I got to hear all the birth stories, and we were talking about the postpartum stuff specifically, though, after that. And my friend was sharing just how meaningful it is still to her to look back after her baby was born on me coming to visit, because I had a little baby at the time too. I had a 4-month-old, and I came, and Celosia was just on me, like in the baby carrier. And I, like you said, Maryn, I vacuumed and cleaned up her kitchen and made her food and made her an herb bath. Like, she still remembers this. This kid's 9 years old. And she's just like, that was so meaningful to have someone knowledgeable and like confident come into the space, like understanding what I needed and me not having to really say a whole lot about what I needed. And just, to have that gift was really beautiful. And so we were talking about that. And then, all of the women had shared their birth stories already. And then they also were sharing their postpartum stories. And the theme over and over again was that, yes, they weren't really that prepared, but they were more prepared than their partners and their families and their in-laws. And so they were just all sharing stories about, inconsiderate in-laws, and maybe sister-in-laws coming over with their super, super loud, rowdy kids right after a baby was born, and it just feeling like too much for their nervous system, and it just not being respectful of like what someone actually needs. And that's because we don't know. Like, our culture has erased so much of that information and that tenderness and that like care that is so crucial. And that's why we didn't invent this idea of mothering the mother, right? But that's why this is kind of a trope. Like, the mother needs to be mothered. She should not be hostessing and should not be acting as if a life-changing event had just not occurred. So, yeah, just wanted to share that experience. And I encourage all of you to talk about this with the people in your lives, the women in your lives, in the next week. If you're at a potluck tonight or whatever this weekend, ask people, what was your postpartum like? What were your highs? What were your lows? What do you wish you had known? What do you feel like our community needs more of? And just be one of the people that's having this conversation where you live. And said, oh my God, yes, mother-in-law not helping with a crying baby or offering food while cooking for her family. I'm still traumatized.
Dealing with family, extended family, I find that that's one of the more uncomfortable, sometimes transparent lessons that we all need to learn in some ways. But in preparation, I've found that, especially with first time moms, it's really valuable to have that conversation. And so by that, I mean talking to these first time parents about what their plan is, right? Because even if they're planning a home birth, our culture is such that, oh, the baby's here and everybody wants to rush in, right? And that's the hospital model. We know that people show up at the hospital. So at home, what is someone's plan with that? Most people have excited family members, right, around this baby. And that's another thing, it's around the baby, which is expected. But how do they intend to handle that? And 9 times out of 10, with a first time mom, they have no idea, right? They're like, oh, well, after I have the baby, my mother-in-law is going to come over, or all of the family is going to come over, or, they don't really have a plan, but they don't have any boundaries around it because they don't know that that is a thing. They don't know that that's going to be really useful. So something as simple as that, not telling someone what to do, but just asking what their intentions are, hearing what they are, and helping them kind of shape that so that it actually meets their needs. And most people that I've worked with, when you're done with that conversation, they have a different perspective. I remember one couple in particular last year, first time parents, that were like mind blown. They were like, and the mom actually said, she was like, but this makes so much sense because I've had this feeling inside of me that when the baby's here, I don't want anyone to touch the baby. I already feel kind of like a mama bear. Like, I imagine our relatives coming over and I feel anxiety, and the baby's not even here yet. I haven't even been through labor. So she was really relieved. She's like, oh, okay, this makes perfect sense then, and they were very confident parents and they had a good relationship with each other. So they immediately decided, okay, thanks for sharing that. Like, we didn't know that. And we're going to ask our family now to wait, uh, probably a couple of days at least. And then when we do want them to come over and see the baby, we're going to have some boundaries around that, and, whatever that looks like for them. And sometimes it's giving people jobs, right? If the mother-in-law is going to come over, that she very lovingly knows there are things that need to be done, right? It's not about sitting holding a baby. A mother does not need help with that generally. Yes, take a shower, yes, take a bath, but generally the education is around, we don't need someone to hold the baby for us. That's the mom's job, but the mom needs to be supported in that. And what are the other things that need to happen around the house? So just saying that some of this is super practical, it's super logistical. Okay, how is the family, the outside family, going to participate, and how is that going to look? And then from there, people can talk about meal trains or how they want to be supported by their communities. But most people who haven't had a baby really don't know that there are limits that need to be imposed for their own health and their own sanity and wellness, right? And then, of course, the larger conversation is balancing that sort of like this isolation, because we need to protect the family energy, with not being over isolated eventually. Like that can happen too. So, it's a complex conversation, but I'm sharing with you that most people do not know what works for them, on just like a physiological level, because that's really what we're talking about. This isn't necessarily like, oh, I don't like my mother-in-law. This is like, no, the mother-in-law just doesn't belong in that space, because physiologically the mother is bonding with the baby, and the dad of the baby, is also kind of in that triangle, as well as any other children. So external family, has an outside role. They're not in that, they're not in that really close relationship. And I think a lot of, like, let's just be stereotypical, right? Like a lot of mothers and mother-in-laws overstep there because they're excited, because they don't know, and because the woman hasn't set the boundary as the mother. She is the mother now. So that's a huge other conversation. But that's where that stems from, is stepping into that mother role and making choices for your family even before the baby's here.
Yeah, and there's so many really good resources for this. The one that I like to point my clients toward is this cute thing Gloria LeMay had made at one point. I'll see if I can find the link. I'll look right now. But yes, Lynn, it is very hard to set boundaries with family sometimes when we haven't had enough practice yet.
Right. Many women haven't had practice, and many women in their pregnancies are still acting like the daughters, and that's natural as we move from maiden to mother. So it's not a judgment, right? And we can have had 10 babies and still have aspects of ourselves that are maiden, but it's being called, I think, to step into the role of mother fully, which can be uncomfortable. But a lot of birth scenarios even are reflective of a woman really just being the daughter still. And you can be the daughter for as long as you need to, until it interferes with your ability to be the mother, if that makes sense. So it is complex stuff. And maybe for some, it doesn't feel super easy to have some of these conversations or boundaries, but you have time in a pregnancy to do that. Hopefully, you have a partner that is with you on doing that together, and that can really shift a relationship as well. To come into the, like, we are the parents now. We are the parents now. We actually don't care what anybody thinks we should do or what we should do with our baby. We are the parents now.
I put this link to Gloria LeMay's article over in the chat. And if you haven't seen it before, you should definitely click the link and read it later. It's really, really funny and cute. And it's the perfect thing to like send to in-laws beforehand, or to even print out and hand out copies of. Very practical and sweet and funny. What else? What are some of your Postpartum highlights, Maryn.
Hmm.
Any memories stand out to you?
Yeah, for sure. There was at least one, maybe two postpartums where I had a group of women that kind of had a schedule. And I think you were probably part of that at some point, Margo. But just local women, that decided to step in. What did I have at that time? Four, five, six kids. I don't remember, enough that like a meal train wasn't really helpful for us because we have so many people. And that just felt like, I don't know, it felt like an imposition. Plus, being picky about food, there reached a certain point for me where I was like, okay, that's not actually helpful. But what was helpful was this group of women taking turns coming over just in the morning. So I had told them, we had talked about it, obviously. The most organized one, I believe, had like written it all down. It was very clear. And so each morning, someone arrived, one of these women. I didn't have to talk to them. I didn't have to entertain them. Half the time, I didn't even see them, but they came into the house and they knew what was needed. So they knew to, whatever it was, clean up the kitchen after breakfast, put dinner in the crock pot. They had a list. And it was the kind of stuff that I would have done had I not just had a baby, or maybe my husband would have done, but he had whatever, five kids to watch. So it was really beautiful. And it is inspiring, right? To think about how something that small can really make a difference to someone. So even if you only have three women that can help you out, it's not really that much time for each of those women, really. I mean, assuming they're flexible, assuming, they get it to a certain extent. But it took whoever came over in the morning maybe 30 minutes, I think. So it wasn't a huge deal for them, but it was super appreciated. So something like that is another creative way to kind of work out help in whatever way you need it. But that was a highlight. That was really nice knowing that my kitchen wasn't going to like blow up due to dishes in the sink and all of that. And Jason didn't have to worry about it. So it was great for our family. Super appreciated that.
I think I froze. Sorry. I missed the last little bit of what you said. But someone in the comments said, that's amazing.
It is. And again, just encouragement. If you're having a baby or if you're doing this postpartum doula thing, you can implement tools like that. Hey, do you have, a couple of friends that are willing to help? And see if you can help someone organize that. Most women never would have thought of it, and I think we're so trained in this culture in most of our communities, right, that we don't really like do those kind of things for each other. I mean, maybe in some places you have a neighbor that will just come in and open your fridge or start cleaning up your house, but most people, we just don't have that kind of thing, even with our friends. So it was really nice.
Mm. I'm curious if people have questions about the postpartum time or doing postpartum doula work or anything that is sort of involved in this general topic of the postpartum time. Should we invite people to pop questions in the chat if they've got them?
Yeah, we can totally do that these last few minutes. I feel like I've talked enough for one day. So people have questions, go for it.
And if you have a question and you want to unmute yourself and ask it, you are also welcome to do that if we just take turns.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. So I just wondered, my name is Sharice. Um, I am a birth and postpartum doula, and I'm just telling you a little bit about myself. And I trained with like a nonprofit corporation here in Philadelphia, Maternal Care Coalition. Um, but I wondered what your typical postpartum visit looked like as a doula. Like, so, your first visit, what are some things that you typically, do or to take care of the family, mom? Um, yeah.
You want to take this one, Maryn?
Sure. Well, I've never been a postpartum doula, to be honest with you, but I think a midwife does a lot of those same things. So I think it really depends on the family, obviously, right? And it depends, I don't know, even down to like what kind of birth they had. Maybe someone's in the hospital, that greatly changes the kind of care that you can give or would give. But assuming someone's home, then the 24-hour visit is the first one we do. And I love that visit. I really do. I love seeing how fresh off of birth the mom is, and the baby, everything still feels really new, which is how it should be. So it's really just a continuation of having been there at the birth, really. Like, if we could stay, maybe we'd stay, but usually we want to go home and get some sleep. So sometimes the 24-hour is even like a 12-hour, just depending on when we come back. So for me, and this isn't a doula thing, but I'll just say it, like just checking in on the mom, like how's her bleeding, like, physically what's going on. Same with baby, how's the baby nursed, how's the baby latching? And then the care is just lots of love, I feel like. We like to do the rice pudding thing, which we have the recipe all over. It's not our recipe, but it's in the course. That's something I love to make for people if it wasn't made in labor. I love to start an herb bath for them with the herbs we've brewed, probably during labor, just seeing what kind of tea I can make her, maybe giving her a foot massage or a leg massage, just hearing where she's at. Because again, it's so fresh. She probably hasn't really had any time. Maybe she's had a couple hours of sleep. So it's just really an extended birth energy to me. And that's really fun to see where people are at. And sometimes people are just really, really tired, and maybe they don't want all of that or a very long visit. But usually I found women are excited to kind of like review the birth as well and not tell the whole story, but they're kind of in this space of like, wow, like that was amazing, or like, oh my God, that was really rough, but I made it through, right? So that kind of gives you an idea. But in the course itself, in our postpartum, the Mothering the Mother course, I think we have like a nice PDF with visit times, like 24 hours, 2 days, 3 days, whatever it is. And we have some ideas and things we normally do. So if you're interested in that, that's part of the course.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have a question? Wait, there were maybe a few in the chat. Curious how often you've witnessed postpartum depression to the point where the mother does not want to be with the baby very much. I think this is a really big topic. And it's really hard to pin down. But I think your specific question of this, not wanting to be with the baby very much thing, I don't think I've ever seen it. I think I've seen people struggling with their mental health for sure in the postpartum. And some of that has to do perhaps with the hormones, and some of it has to do with the situation and the support they're getting or they're not getting, and the sleep they're getting or not getting. And I think sort of a controversial opinion is that so much of postpartum depression is treated as like, oh, it's just hormonal. We just have to get her through, kind of this hormonal time, and then she'll be on the other side of it, instead of seeing like, no, there are things we can do. This is probably a sign that she has some needs that are going unmet, and we should be more creative about helping her solve them instead of just medicating someone or, suggesting they stop breastfeeding or whatever some of the more mainstream approaches are to that. But I've not seen it be that serious to that degree personally that I can recall.
It's complex though. I think there are some reasons why a mother might not be super into her baby. I feel like I've seen it a couple of times, and I don't know that I would label it postpartum depression at that point. Or like early in the postpartum, it can just be, well, it's usually trauma of some kind, right? Whether that was trauma from this birth or from some other place. Again, you kind of have to know who you're working with. I can think of someone that really didn't want to nurse her baby, and it was weird to watch. And her reasoning was every time she nursed, it was super painful for her uterus, right? The afterbirth pains were bad. So it was like this complex, like psycho, physical, emotional thing that manifested for her in those first couple of days. And I wouldn't have called it depression. It was like a complex traumatic response. And, we worked through it, she worked through it, and that shifted. So I have seen that, but I think we have to be probably asking more questions in a way and know the mom that we're working with as best we can to be able to like have any insight into what's going on. As far as what is considered the postpartum time, Ariel, it definitely varies. So the medical world will tell you 6 weeks. That's when women go to their last doctor's appointment. They're given the okay for sex. They're told, oh, your body's done healing. That may or may not actually be true, but that's what the textbooks that doctors read say, I guess. And anyone that's lived it knows that's probably not true, that 6 weeks probably is only a milestone of sorts that may involve physical healing for sure, right? But is it done? Who knows? Is it done at 3 months, which is considered the fourth trimester of, the whole childbearing year? Maybe. Is it a year after? Maybe. So there is no postpartum time. I think it was Robin Lim that says you're postpartum for the rest of your life. So go be with that one.
Mm-hmm.
Honesty, do you have a question?
Oh, should I?
No?
No.
You were unmuted, so I thought you maybe did.
Oh, I don't mean to be unmuted. Oh no, how embarrassing. I'll live. No, I don't have one. I'm enjoying myself. I wish I did. Sorry.
It's okay.
So if people do have these more complex topics that we don't have time for today, like moms being resentful, partner relationships, I could talk for the next 10 hours probably, and that would be really boring in some ways. So I would advise if you're wanting to have those conversations with us, then check out the course. sign up for the course if you feel led. You are invited to the weekly doula calls that we already have going if you are in this Mothering the Mother. So if you're in Mothering the Mother, show up on Wednesday to the Indie Birth Doula Academy call and ask these questions. And I know when I host the call, I'm usually open to whatever people want to talk about. I don't come with a presentation. You know, if someone shows up and they want to talk about partner dynamics in the postpartum, I'll do it. And we can spend a whole lot of time on that if that's where people's interest is. Other than that, you know, you can always kind of submit topics to us to do on these calls or as podcasts. And I see some others coming in, relatives not respecting, like we could go on forever, and they are all important and they are all beautiful and part of this experience. But in the time we have today, I think that's about it. So, you know, like I said, get in touch with us if there's other stuff you want to hear us talk about at a more extended time, let's say.
Yeah. I put the link again for Mothering the Mother in the chat box. People who register for that before the end of the enrollment window, which is October 1st. So if you do in the next, like, what is that, 2 days, 3 days?
Oh.
You're also gonna get our doula business boot camp course for free, which is like a $1,500 value, which is pretty insane. So definitely, if you're interested in wanting to get on the bandwagon, now is a good time to do it. We can also answer questions for you if you've got any about that course. I stayed up way too late fixing some things and tweaking some of our checkout pages to make it easier for people to do it. And so I am admittedly a little bit half asleep at the moment. Usually I'm higher energy than this. But maybe that's good for that. It's like I kind of feel like I just had a baby 24 hours ago. That's the feeling. The like I might fall asleep sitting up feeling. Channeling it. Do we have any other like housekeeping stuff or announcements?
I don't think so. I can't think of anything.
We're always accepting new students for the Indie Birth Midwifery School as well. So if that's something on your radar, we've simplified the application process by not having one. And you can join anytime. So that's always there. Our Doula Academy is there as well for you, and so many ways you can get involved and start learning with us. And we have a couple other sort of like smaller entry points as well if you are curious about becoming a doula or a midwife. I could post the links for those, I guess, too. I might as well. Why not? Since I now said it out loud. We've got a course called Doula Dreams, which is exploring the path to becoming a doula. And we also have the Beginner's Guide to Radical Midwifery, which is similar in that it's an exploration of the path to becoming a radical midwife. So I'll pop those in the chat, people.
All right, everybody, enjoy your Aries full moon. We will see you back here in about a month for the next full moon. Not sure what that topic is, but if you're on Instagram, or better yet, on our newsletter list, if you're not on there, go get on there. It's just at indiebirth.org. You just put your name in and you'll get notification emails about when and what this next moon Zoom will be about. So have a beautiful day or night wherever you are. We'll see you soon.